Good. Fantastic. Welcome everyone to our session today. My name is Flavia Richardson and I'm Chief Commercial Officer at WIZZ Ventures. Our mission is to empower founders to accelerate their growth by providing them both amazing and unique financing tools as well as digital marketing expertise. Every single month, we are blessed to have amazing guests that share with our clients and within our ecosystem their expertise, their journeys, and even the solutions that they're building. So I'm very happy to be able to head this for ourselves on our journey. And it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today and my guest. Wiz is joining me today, and she is the founder of WIZZ&CO. And most importantly, she's an amazingly experienced retail expert and brand builder. And she has been working with thousands of brands and most importantly, major retailers as on developing multi-channel strategy. So Wiz, welcome to our channel and thank you so much for taking the time to share with us your story and some amazing insights into the industry.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I know Wiz, everybody's looking to, learn a little bit more about you and about your journey. So I'm very excited to be able to host you today. So tell us all about you and what you're working right now.
Yeah, I've been in retail for 20 years. I started my career at Selfridges, which was amazing. I worked there for 12 years and latterly was head of beauty buying. I started in fashion. I was accessories buyer, jewelry, the concept store. I then went to work for brands. So I was sales director for Cowshed and Soho Home, interiors range. And then I started my own business. So at WIZZ&CO, we've worked with global retailers such as Ocado, Next, Fenwick, also with global brands such as Dermalogica, Arabian Oud. And I also help a lot of brand founders scale as well. So through strategy mentoring, helping them on their distribution strategies, how to attract more customers, ultimately how to stand out in what is a very rapidly changing retail market. And also consumer trends are changing very quickly. So it's how do you adapt to these to create more cut through? And ultimately, I want you to be the brands that your customers are raving about.
Amazing. Well, Wiz, I'm sure that our clients and everybody watching this on record, it will be amazing. So I know that today really we're here to debate the two major strategies for companies. What's the difference between retail or direct to consumer? For those viewers that are going to be watching this, I think it's really important to just learn a little bit about the basic before we go in and discuss some of the finer details.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, direct to consumer is usually the channels that you own yourself, usually through majority, I suppose, e-commerce. But actually, if you have standalone stores as well, that can sometimes be direct to consumer because you're owning that customer data. You're talking to them directly on, I suppose, a B2C basis. Compared to retail, where you're working with partners who will be selling your product for you. But I think that's an interesting phrase because actually you need to be supporting those retailers and helping the products sell as well. So that's a bit of a misconception there. So that's more of a kind of, I suppose, a B2B relationship to be able to reach more customers. So I suppose they're the two key differences.
Okay, that's fantastic. So now looking at these kind of two strategies and them coming together, what are the things that a brand owner, a new brand owner, an early stage entrepreneur should really consider when they're putting the building blocks together?
I think it's really thinking about a whole customer journey. And this is what's a challenge that I see a lot of brand founders face is they're creating a brand, they're launching it, they've got a great website, they're starting social media, they might be running some ads. And they're really trying to build that brand awareness. But a lot of people get stuck, I suppose, at this end of the funnel, which can take a long time to build. But actually, it's thinking about that whole customer journey from where you're taking them to them first hearing about them to kind of how do you generate and garner more interest with them? How do you then get them to that purchase stage, which is super important? So what is your channel strategy? Where are they able to purchase purchase from you, so your direct to consumer channels, or is that retail partners or any other collaborations that you may have? And then how do you build, I suppose, into that journey, the retention? How do you get them coming back again? How do you build brand loyalty, which is super, super important? And then how do you create brand advocates? Something that is very often, I suppose, forgotten or not enough time spent on, because it is a much more profitable way to grow. Because actually, when you're at that awareness stage, people often need to see your brand multiple times before they recognize it, before they take action, before they think about purchasing. But actually, once somebody knows your brand, knows your product, they're more likely to come back and purchase from you again. And if you give them an amazing customer experience, they're going to go and tell their friends about your brand, about their product, the experience they've had. And then essentially this is free PR. So I see a lot of brands that I can't afford to do PR yet, I can't afford to do digital ads, but actually, are you focusing on the customers that you've already started to build, and how can you nurture them a bit more?
That is so well said. I think that we always have to re-engage these two strategies to reinforce each other so that you can get more value and create more value for your customers, whether they buy your product in a supermarket or whether they buy it straight from your website. I think fundamentally it's about continuously re-engaging these two communities. And as you grow, I think in terms of the UK landscape, retail landscape, I think it would be really good to just understand some of the major trends that are happening. I mean, you're at the forefront of this change from retail to direct to consumer. You're seeing so many amazing, great examples of organizations navigating this. I'm very keen to just see a little bit more about how you position this ecosystem and what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. And I've seen a lot of people that have shied away from retail in the last couple of years. And I think if you read the mainstream media headlines, retail is dead. That is absolutely not true. But I think if we read any mainstream media headline, we're going to be duped. But that's a whole other topic, I'm sure. So it's about making sure you're keeping up with trade press. You're finding out what's going on and kind of really starting to, I suppose, analyze what's happening in the market. And I talk a lot about consumer trends and retail trends for this reason, because it's about the retailers that are innovating, that are doing things differently, I suppose, investing in that customer experience. And we've obviously seen this kind of huge up and down of spikes of digital versus all stores being shut in certain lockdowns. So of course, a lot more people shopped online, but then we did see the footfall surge back up to pre-pandemic times as well. So people do want to go out, they do want to go shopping. People were spending more. They weren't necessarily buying as much, but the average transaction value was higher. So physical retail certainly isn't dead. People do want to go to the shops, but they don't want to be able to have an experience where they can just buy something at a click of a button online. So it's really about working or thinking about partnering with the retailers that are doing things differently. There's no surprise that Debenhams and House of Fraser kind of went under. John Lewis are in big trouble because ultimately they were double discounting because they were price matching everything that those two retailers were doing, positioned in a premium way, saying never knowingly undersold. They kind of created a luxury way of discounting, but that still didn't help their bottom line. Again, no surprise there if you kind of really dig into that detail. And they have a portfolio of brands that's not doing anything different to the rest of the high street. Then you see companies like Next, who are doing a phenomenal job online, and they have a very different product offering in their digital space to what they have in stores. And they're a super interesting business because they sell so many brands online. They've been very, very, I suppose, quietly taking a huge amount of market share from John Lewis. They're number one in the UK for women's wear, for kids wear, and for home. I helped them launch beauty 3 years ago, and they're a huge category player in that arena now. And they've got a hugely loyal following, and people that are purchasing there are buying for the whole household. And they've really reinvented their stores as well. They've made them that everyone is within a half an hour drive of them in the UK. And I think 90% of people are within 15-minute drives. They've created very easy click and collect and drop-off points. So actually shopping and going into stores needs to be more than just just going for a browse. It's offering services and Amazon pickup points and going to get a coffee, and what else can you experience while you're there as well. I've also seen, it's really interesting, there's been a lot more presence outside London, which I'm really excited about. Everything was very London centric before. All brands spent their marketing budget on marketing and experiences in London, which was hugely competitive. But of course, with a lot of people working from home, there's been a lot of store closures, but actually a lot more reopening as well. And those destination out-of-town shopping centres are doing really well. We've seen Harrods go into beauty outside of London. Flannels has been really expanding as well. They've got an amazing Gen Z customer, another entrant into the beauty market as well. So yeah, it's very interesting. And then I suppose in the digital space, there's started to become a lot of consolidation as well with retail. I suppose multi-brand retailers, because there's so much choice out there. We've got more independent marketplaces than ever. But then you're seeing the likes of Feel Unique acquired by Sephora, and Cult Beauty acquired by the Hut Group. So I think a lot of these key players, these big players, are seeing that they need to consolidate to, I suppose, to continue to kind of gain market share.
I think you've raised a very important point. So the kind of major players are acquiring more and more brands, but actually one of the things that I've been noticing, and this is happening at an accelerated rate since the lockdown started, is this new wave of brands that are just owning their channels, a shift towards direct to consumer. And we've seen that market expanding 3 times in the last 12 months, so 2021. What is the reason behind it? Is it because the new brands want to own everything outright, get the data, or is it something completely different that is triggering this?
I mean, I think there's 2 camps here, because there's a lot of brands that were very dominant on retail that are really wanting to create more of their mix as D2C. And then there's a lot of traditional D2C brands that are then wanting to get more into physical retail, like Glossier opening permanent stores, for example, or people doing more pop-ups. So actually, I think there's both sides of both parties are trying to do a bit of what the other one is trying to do. And I think the reason for that is I think both arenas have seen their own ups and downs, from the stores opening and closing and maybe being stocked in the wrong stores, to again a huge amount of changes in digital, from Facebook changes, iOS updates, kind of social media blackouts, data challenges. So things are changing rapidly there as well. So I think everyone's thinking, whoa, I don't want to be too reliant on one channel. How can I try and diversify? Because if something does change, or they haven't started to harness another channel and that takes off, I think you have to be more nimble than ever. So I think people are trying out different things as well.
Oh, that is so right. As it happens, one of the reasons I really wanted to organize this session with you is because every day for the last 6 months, I've actually met companies in direct consumer, young brand owners, very ambitious, that already had a bit of traction in the early stages. So now they were looking at the next thing that they could do, the next kind of platform they could use to reach new types of consumers, whether demographics, whether regional, whether looking at the US, and they all come back to retail strategy. I think it would be really great for the audience and for us to actually understand a little bit more about what companies, when is really the right time to think about retail as a strategy. And the second, I think, would be, is this associated with the brand actually having a physical location, or is the retail, let's say the John Lewis, Next, and others are actually the physical location? So maybe let's start with the beginning. When is the right time to go retail?
I think it's when you've got some traction. I think there's a big misconception with launching with a retailer that everything's going to fly off the physical or virtual shelves and everything is done for you. That is absolutely not the case. So you need to have some brand recognition, ideally, and some traction, I suppose, in with customers. So when they do see your product, that they recognize it and they think, oh, wow, yeah, great, this product's stocked here. I've been seeing this around. And that also gives the customer validation that it's stocked within these big retailers. It's been chosen by these buyers, that it's like, okay, this is a good brand. It's sat next to my other favorite brands. This must be cool. So it gives an element of validation, certainly, to be in those stores, which I think is certainly kudos, and whether that's to customers or actually even investors, because I see this a lot as well. Often if people are trying to raise investment, that people want to see that analytical data, but actually they may not know your brand, but they do know a big name retailer. So if they've been chosen by that retailer as well, it's just another point of validation. So yeah, it's kind of understanding what traction have you got already. Will customers recognize you, and how do you fit into that retailer's assortment as well? And I think every time that you are I suppose moving your business to a next stage, it's always looking at how your brand fits in the market. So what's changing with retail and consumer trends? I talk a lot about this, and I've got a recent webinar if anyone wants to catch up on it, or a new event coming up in March, because actually aligning to where the customer is going and how they're going to be behaving is super important. And I think everybody starts their business, they see a gap in the market, but actually where is that to once you've launched, once you've started to get sales, once other brands are popping up around you? How do you keep innovating so you stay ahead of the curve? And actually that's what a buyer is going to be looking for as well. They want to see something that's different to the brands that they already stock. They're not going to exit something that does something the same as you just to bring a new brand in for the sake of it if the other one's already trading quite well.
It's a very interesting point when you say traction. I think this is where founders are very confused. At least this is my experience for the last few months. What is great traction? Is it a figure? Is it a number of kind of active users that are continuously touching your website, your online shops? How do founders know when they have enough traction?
Again, yeah, something that I am asked a lot, and it's also how do you demonstrate that when you're pitching to a buyer as well. And ultimately, it's kind of it's really hard to kind of give a tangible answer to this. And if there's a magic formula, I'd be very rich. But it's a number of different variables really that kind of creates that hype of a brand. I think we all know it. All of a sudden, we're like, well, there's no such thing as an overnight success, but we suddenly think there is. And we think, I'm just hearing and seeing about this brand everywhere. And it's kind of a traction of, being seen and heard in lots of different places. So whether it's with press, whether it's kind of digital marketing, whether it is with being stocked with retailers, whether it's your friends talking about it, whether you've been following someone on social and you keep seeing blogs about it. It's kind of all of those different touch points, which I can also see gets very overwhelming for people as well, because you're a founder, you're trying to build a business, you're wearing every single hat. You're generally good at one area of the business, much better than other areas. So people always tend to sway and lean into doing, we all do what we're good at, what we enjoy. But actually it's about how do you think about the bigger picture and the strategy, which I help people on, and think, okay, where else can you get seen and heard, and how do you create that buzz? Because that's going to help attract more customers. And ultimately, that's going to help attract buyers, because there's nothing better than a buyer coming to you rather than you pitching to a buyer.
Interesting. I think it leads us really nicely into my next question. When companies are thinking about retailers, they're always thinking about with a lot of negative feelings about buyers and the experience going through that process. I think for the audience, we ought to just examine a little bit what is involved in the process. Let's say that you're not very fortunate, the buyer has not come to you, but you are, let's say we take a startup that has already quite good following, they're doing the sort of couple of million of revenue, they want to understand how to get into a retail chain, how to get their product on the shelf so that you can see it. What does that process look like?
Yeah, I see a lot of people that wobble at the point of pitching to buyers and retailers, because often they pitch and they don't always hear back. It's very rare to hear back unless they do want you to do want to kind of have a meeting with you. And I think it's good to understand and put yourself in a buyer's shoes. So I suppose to explain, I think people really think that a buyer's going to fashion shows every week, or they're surrounded by beauty products, and they're buying wine and getting drunk all the time and just eating out, or and do you know what, there's definitely some perks of the job, which is amazing, but the reality of that, it's about 10 to 20% of your job. You have to be a futurist, you have to be creative, you're forecasting what the customers want. And of course, you're sourcing the best edit of brands, but they're very commercial. Every Monday, they're trading the business. They're trading what's happening next week, next month. They're like the heartbeat and strategy of a retailer. They're setting the marketing strategy, what's happening in the store, what's happening in digital, how the window displays look, what the marketing campaigns are, as well as looking after probably at least 100 brands. When I was head of buying, I was looking after 400 brands, and I had 2 buyers and 2 admins. So just to meet with your existing suppliers, it takes a huge amount of time. You're getting at least 200 emails a day. So you don't have that time to get back to people as much as you would love to give them feedback. So it's about being really succinct. They will be looking at your pitch very quickly. So it's about including some key metrics. So what is your USP, and how would you communicate that super simply? And there's a great blog which will help you with a guide there. So create that elevator pitch. How do you emotively solve a customer's problem with what you're doing? Which again takes time to refine, something that you can always keep evolving as well. And then when you are pitching, the big thing that's forgotten a huge amount of times is in that pitch, putting in what your proof of concepts are. What is that validation? What is that traction you're getting that demonstrates that there's that buzz and that hype? Because if this buyer has never heard of you, they're just going to be judging you on, I suppose, your visual identity and kind of what your USP is. But actually they're commercial. They want to see that this is going to, they're like, oh, show me the money. What is this going to take cash? So I was always tasked with double-digit growth every single year and achieved that. But as a result, you're driving the business hard. So yeah, really think about making sure you're aligning to their creative side, but also their commercial side as well.
So when you're saying about the commercial side, I mean, the vast majority of founders, they're already quite accustomed by that point to presenting financial information, projections. They understand their vertical in a market, what new demographics or users are really demanding, because they would have shifted their product quite a number of times before they even think about going to a buyer. How does this kind of proposition, how is it defined when they actually don't understand the goal of the retailer? Or is it really the sort of 2-digit growth? Let's say a cosmetic company, they're going for a presentation with a buyer, and now they just have to show to the buyer, actually the market is growing so fast that I'm already seeing more than 30, 50, 100% growth year on year, month on month, whatever the case may be. Is it about drilling down into the numbers and the things that they're experiencing themselves, and that forms a good commercial foundation, or is it something completely different?
It's looking at all the variables that they've got, and this is what I work with a lot of people on, is, okay, let's see where you are. What's your brag list is a great way to start, and how do we make this into some very short, sexy stats that people can look at a glance in a very visual document. So it isn't about saying, here's a really long spreadsheet about my growth and projections and things like that. It's saying, okay, this is the growth I'm seeing, or this is my customer engagement, or there's various different ones that you could be looking at, or this is where I've been featured in press. So it's looking at all of those things, amazing things that you've done since you've launched your brand. Which ones do you think are the best? Which are the juiciest? And how do you portray those into a deck that at a glance somebody can very quickly see and understand what it is that and the traction that your brand is on? And it's a great question, because people say, well, I don't know what the retailers' goals are, and of course you never will. But if you can give them those I suppose indications, they know what all their other brands are doing, and they get that indication. The buyer thinks, okay, so that's doing that, and I know the brand I already stock, hasn't actually done those things, isn't growing as quickly, so maybe I can benchmark that next to these brands.
I think you're making a reference to something very important. Really understanding as a founder benchmark of your industry, and not only on your industry, on how the other companies that are selling a similar product are performing, to be able to highlight how your brand is better positioned to be in front of the audience in store.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is all about having I suppose, a really targeted distribution strategy as well, and really thinking about each retailer that you're going to pitch to, and how can you adapt your pitch for each one, and do your research. It shines through. If you have, I mean, I've been pitched to thousands of times. I was getting 10 pictures a day and like boxes all over my desk, and the people that have done their research, and it shines through, and the people that haven't, you just delete. Why, if someone hasn't taken the time to look at your business, why would you take time to consider reading their email when you have so many other ones? And it's not ignorance, it's just time. And if you're serious about working with them, that buyer also needs to see that you're serious about then building the business as a partnership as well. So yeah, it sounds really complex, but the proof of concepts is the thing. Honestly, 9 out of 10 times is forgotten in the pitch pack. So really think about
that's quite important. I was particularly oblivious to how important it is to actually know and be able to provide benchmarks with maybe some of the other brands that the retailer is working with. But let's say now that you're successful, you've had your pitch and you're kind of moving to the next stage. How long does it take to get to a commercial deal? And what are the sort of key elements that will be involved from the moment you pitch until your product is stocked in all the shops? Or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, lead times buyers are always working at least 6 months in advance. So if you think about sales seasons, is kind of the obvious thing to think of: a Christmas and a summer sale. Generally, if there's end of line products or it's seasonal, people will have a sale at this point and then start to bring in new brands once that sale finishes. I suppose that's a traditional sense of capacity with floor space, but then also in the virtual world as well, it's capacity on banners and social media pages. There's only a certain amount of capacity of brands that you can promote in different areas. Obviously, you don't have the physical walls, but actually, if you do want to launch something and do it well, you do want to have a marketing kind of strategy behind it as well. So those are kind of the key, I suppose, the key times. Some bigger retailers, like huge ones, multi-store, hundreds, thousands of stores, they'll be working probably 12 months ahead, just because it's such a machine for them to be able to launch things and kind of work through different things. Certainly big supermarkets and things like that can sometimes be the case. But yeah, I think on average they're working 6 months ahead. So you need to make sure you're kind of 3 months before that pitching to them, which is when they're making a decision. So yeah, I'd say usually 6 to 9 months if you then get that meeting and confirm commercial arrangements.
Okay, so from the perspective, now you're discussing the sort of distribution. Let's say that it's a retailer like John Lewis. They have multiple sites. Can you be in one, or can you be in all of them at the same time? And most importantly, what is the financial pressure of companies that are selected for a commercial deal? And what are the sort of standard payment terms? I know from kind of supermarkets, they have quite challenging payment terms that many startups actually can't cope with. So how does it work with the rest of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it can be challenging for startup brands, but that's why I think it's so important to have a distribution strategy and thinking, well, if you are stocked in this retailer, how is that going to, I suppose, catapult your brand awareness? And then how will that brand awareness help you, will probably organically help you grow your D2C business as well. So this isn't about us kind of separate channels, because it kind of gives you a halo effect as well. Actually, people might buy your product in a store, in a retailer, but then start following with social media, then maybe come to your website. So yeah, and either direction, it's where does the customer want to buy you and what's convenient for them ultimately. But yeah, the financials can be really hard. Payment terms can be really hard, because you have to kind of get the stock ready, deliver the order, and you often won't get paid between 30, 60, sometimes 90 days after delivery. So it can be a real challenge with cash flow. And yeah, they have high margin expectations. And sometimes they ask for marketing contribution. Again, I work with kind of brands in what I call a retail mastermind, where we kind of all work together and think, okay, so which of these marketing opportunities is the right for my brand? Like, how should I be trading it? What can I be doing to grow the sales? Because it isn't always what the retailer says, buy this marketing package and everything's going to sell. That might not be the case. So it's working out what the right thing to do for your brand is within each business.
The final question, and I know that we're heading towards the end, and I want to know a few kind of tips and tricks that founders can put together. But most importantly, what happens if the product doesn't sell? So let's say that you have stock now, 10, 50, 100 locations, and they haven't sold at the level that you expected in those key seasons. What does it happen that maybe founders are not aware of?
I don't think we should end on this note because it's going to be quite negative. So while I'm talking, if you think of a new question, that would be great.
I do have a positive one.
So this is why it's so important to, once you launch, is to be having a trade and marketing strategy that you're driving as well. So it's not just about leaving the brands there to sell. It's about having a robust plan. And actually, that's what a buyer wants to see, that you know what you're doing and how you can do that. So surround yourself with people that can help you. And definitely you don't want to get into that position. Generally, the buyer will have a forecast in mind of what sales they want you to take. Hopefully you will take those sales, but if you don't, they could make changes quite quickly, and that could be moving you to a different part of the store, or maybe had planned marketing but then pull the marketing, or maybe they do promote it further on some of their own marketing channels. So again, it's about they're reactive. They don't wait till the end of the season to see what happens, which is why a buyer is so busy. Every Monday they have that trading meeting. You're looking at your top increase on sales and your poor performers, and you react, you make changes every week within a couple of days. Like, that's not working. We need to really, really change or do something different.
So actually, it could be that the very next week you're not in this, you're not on the shelf that way you thought you would. You're not in the right section. You're not at the front as you're entering the shop. So you could be in a completely different place.
Potentially. I mean, I don't think within a week that would be fair, but the buyer has to make money, and from whatever their product assortment is. So yeah, if they need to make changes quickly, they will make changes quickly, which again is why it's useful for you to be seeing what's happening. If it's launched online, have you checked it's like in all the right product categories? What would the shopping experience be? Are you in the right drop-down menu? Are you easy to find if you search your brand name? Lots of kind of key checks like that, as well as going into store and is the stock out? So it's a real classic bloopers that happen. Oh, it's not out. That's why. It was an incorrect barcode was put on it, so you thought it was out, and the system said it was there, but it wasn't. So there's a lot of lot of things that can be fixed quickly.
I absolutely enjoyed it. I think we definitely finish on an extremely positive note. What are the 3 things that you encourage brand owners, especially that this is their first experience with retailers, to consider, or how best to prepare before they even embark on this journey? So hopefully they won't have to go through this. They won't have the challenges that are a possibility or probability in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely keep up with the trade news, even if this is on your strategy in 2 years. Sign up to the retail trade press, get Google alerts for the retailers that you'd love to be in, so you know what's going on with them, and just save those in a folder. And then when you do go to do your pitch, you can look back at them and go, okay, now I know what's interesting for them, what's their what's the values of that retailer, and how can I align to that. Always review your USP and the brands that they already stock, because you do need to make sure that your point of difference is very clear to what they already sell. And yeah, making sure you're aligned to the market and where the market's going. So keeping up with those consumer trends, which I talk about a lot. So yeah, if you let's connect, and I'd love to hear what your kind of key takeaways are from this, if you're going to take any actions. So do get in touch or tag us on social media, and don't forget your proof of concepts.
Oh, amazing, Wiz. And everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. You guys will have seen Wiz's email and details and access to some of the resources that she has ready for companies. We're very fortunate to collaborate with Wiz. And definitely reach us for learning how you can finance your growth, especially if you're thinking about retail strategy. You need substantially larger budgets for your inventory, for your digital marketing, for your TV advertising, if you're looking at expanding the channels that you want to reach through. So thank you so much, Wiz, and thank you everyone watching and rewatching this later on. And definitely stay in touch with us. Thank you, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.